Got it. Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Caldwell County Department of Social Services. Today is Tuesday, January 25th. We're here in the Alden East Orange building, and we will get our meeting started with our Pledge of Allegiance, and the invocation will be led by Senior Pastor David Payne from Fleming's Chapel Baptist Church. Please stand. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much for the invitation to come. And if I might have a point of personal privilege to say thank you for a task that was rendered to my family nearly 30 years ago. I have the privilege of being an adoptive dad. The son that I have came from Indiana. The state of Indiana required that there be a case study and a follow-up, and a sweet lady by the name of Gail Fisher was our social worker and has been on our Christmas card list ever since.
Awesome.
And about a year and a half later, Andrew's biological siblings, who happened to be older than him, were also made available for adoption. So I am the father of 3 because of the work of social services. And you have rendered a blessing to my life, and I thank you.
For sharing that.
I have a long debt needed to be paid, and thank you very much. I'd love to pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the privilege that it is to cast our cares on you, to call for wisdom, to ask for your enablement, and to plead your mercy. Lord, I pray for Caldwell County and the families that are a part of it and the families that are fractured in it. I pray for the welfare of the children. And I pray, Lord, for the wisdom of those who work in the Department of Social Services. Lord, I ask that you would give them a heart of compassion, a mind filled with wisdom, and hands that accomplish much for your glory. Lord, I know that social work is not only rewarding, it's challenging, and sometimes it's even dangerous. I pray for the welfare of those who work in this department, and I pray for the wisdom of those who lead. I ask that you would accomplish that which brings glory to you, as homes can be reunited, as children can be rescued, as we will walk in wisdom and do that which is pleasing in your sight. Because you said, this is what I require of you, that you love mercy and walk humbly before your God. Lord, I pray for this meeting. I pray for these who lead it, and I ask that you'd be exalted and glorified. You would do the work so that we might accomplish what you want to be done. I praise you for the privilege to call on you, and we cast this care and these prayers on you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you all.
Thank you. All right. Is there any amendments to the agenda this evening? None? Fantastic. Need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Now we need a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. All right, get down to the fun stuff. As we always like to see our dear friend, Mr. Chris Connolly, our finance director or business manager, who's going to get up and tell us about how wonderful we're doing and how great we did last year with our budget.
I think we're doing well, and I wish I could get that kind of introduction everywhere I go, so I appreciate that. Our December financial report, reimbursements received in the month totaled $611,111. We ended the month with receivables of about $926,000. Expenses for the month totaled $1,573,622. Therefore, our county dollar expensed in the month was $962,511, which is a high number for a typical month. But if you recall last month, I think we mentioned to you that in November, we had received $445,000 in linked stimulus funding. That was a November revenue that was actually expensed in December. So just that, overlap of 2 months, that money not being expensed until December made December expenses higher than normal.
Inflated that number, yep.
Yeah. In our comparison of current year to prior year, expenses are actually up $220,000 through December. Revenues are up almost $93,000, and our county dollar is up almost $128,000 in the current year. The increased expense and revenue totals, that's simply a result of that linked stimulus money. That's $445,000 that wasn't received or spent last year. So otherwise, both of those numbers would be under our prior year at this point in the year. Typically, at this time of the year, we have a separate mid-year review report for you that we didn't prepare this year because we are looking each month at where we compare in the current year to last year. But I did want to make a couple of comments on where we are at this point in the year. We're basically pretty much even with where we were last year at this point in the year. Staff expense is 62% of our budget. Our staff expense for this point in the year is about $22,000 higher than last year, which is basically nothing when you're talking about almost $5 million at this point in the year. Foster care is the second biggest area of our budget. It makes up about 15% of the budget, and it's about 22 under this year compared to last year. So those two kind of
Cancel each other out.
negate themselves. Otherwise, we're pretty much running neck and neck with where we were at this point last year. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Anybody got any questions? I think you explained it very well, so
All right.
we appreciate you and thank you for all you do, my friend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Next on our agenda is the director's report, Mr. Will Wakefield.
Thank you. It was nice to hear Mr. Payne talk about Gail Fisher. I remember Gail Fisher, she worked here when I first started working here almost 26 years ago. And Gail did a wonderful job, was with our agency for a number of years. I think she actually retired from Catawba County. We're not going to hold that against her, but she did an excellent job, and so that is interesting. And I'm glad he shared that with us, because it is, so often when you hear someone give a story like that and that amount of time and what occurred is, that's always interesting to hear and good to hear. From a personnel standpoint, I'm going to knock on some wood. We've done pretty good here in the last couple months. Most of our movement here recently has been within the agency, and again, sometimes that takes some time when we have some folks move around within the agency. But at the same time, if we have good staff who are interested and want to do a little something different, and we can retain those staff, then that is always a good thing for us to continue to make use of their skills. So we have several areas where we've done that. And also, I think, even though we just printed this off just for you last week, I think we've already filled, I believe, one of those vacancies as well from the outside. So we're even doing a little bit better than what this shows. So I don't want to jinx us. There's been a little bit of a slowdown for us And so that's a good thing, and so we hope to keep moving forward in a good, positive manner from that standpoint. We are also in the midst of filling our current board vacancy left by Ms. Annis. We do have that is through the Social Services Commission. We do have that application, and that posting is on the county website as well. And we do have we've had a couple of folks who've shown some interest, and so we're contacting those folks and making sure that they're able to make sure they found the application they need to fill out and get that sent. And so we want to help them do that. So if we do have individuals who may be interested, we're happy to talk to them. I'm happy to talk to them about that. I know each of you would certainly be happy to talk to them as well. And so the Social Services Commission will look to, I think it was towards the end of February, want to get those applications in. It's on there, and then they will do their part of the process in this vacancy being filled. So we will.
Well, do you know if, once that position is filled, will that go for 3 years beyond July, or do they have to apply again at the end of her term?
I'm thinking what's probably going to happen, unless they run slow on it, which could be a possibility. If they get it done, my guess is they will have to technically, that person would fill these last few months, and then they would technically have to fill that position because it was the end
Correct.
of that one.
Because hers was going to end in
Yes.
the end of June.
If they end up running slow, then my guess is they just may make the appointment and it start in July. But I'm guessing that's what will happen. But I would imagine that they would get that done, and then probably whoever that individual is, they would just then go with them for the other term. So we look forward to that, kind of getting that done and getting that position filled as well. I know I have some other things to talk about in our highlights, so I'll hold that off, but if you have any questions for me at the moment, I'll be glad to.
Well, while we're talking about positions, how was I know we've talked a little bit about it, but maybe you can let the other board members know how the raises were received and the
Yes.
bonus was received.
The County Institute completed the process for the pay study. Commissioners approved that. That officially started for the January pay period for our staff, for all of county staff. And that has been a very positive process, and I think a very positive for all of our staff, and I mean for all the county staff in general. And so we've certainly heard from a number of staff their appreciation for that, and so that's been good for us. We know there are a number of counties in general who are struggling. We know of some nearby departments of social services who are in very tough spot when it comes to staffing in some extremely critical areas. And not to say that we haven't had our own issues, but we have, I think we've done a pretty good job of working to weather that, and this has been very beneficial. And there are a lot of other counties that are in the midst of doing a similar thing for that reason. So our staff have been very appreciative of that, and so that's going very well. So thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. And we also approved a $2,000 bonus for all the employees, full-time employees, and then $1,000 for all part-time employees in January. So they got that last week before last.
Yeah, week and a half ago, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah,
So
that was just a commissioner's way of thanking our employees for working through all the crazy COVID stuff that we've been through. So, but I'm hoping that this will, we just make sure we have to stay on top of the salary stuff. We can't let that get away from us again, and hopefully it cleaned up some of the issues you were having with some of your social workers and made that a little bit more tolerable. So we'll just continue to look at it. Anything else there, Will?
I think that's it for me at the moment.
All right. Next will be Ms. Kim Arnett, and she's going to talk to us about adult and children's services highlights.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'll just echo what Will said. I've heard a lot of positive feedback and appreciation for the results of the PACE study. And I think that, I know for the child welfare, social workers are feeling appreciated. And so that's important, very important for them. So thank the commissioners for that. So I just want to, there's a couple things I want to highlight. I will say that our statistics for child services and adult services are pretty typical, so there's not any one area that I really want to highlight this evening in regards to the statistics. I do want to talk a little bit about our staff development process. You know, Will was talking about how our turnover has slowed down a little. And I think one of the things that will help with our retention is this staff development process. Our child welfare staff development supervisor and social worker has been up and going for some time now. We have about 7 staff in the program at various levels of training. Part of that training involves group sessions where they're talking about how to do documentation, how to do discipline-specific activities, how to read a criminal record check, how to read a statewide CPS check. I mean, just certain things like that, but it's also involving some role-playing initiations, how to fill out safety assessments when you go out and meet a family. Also, it involves our staff development supervisor going out in the field with these folks and shadowing them on their first assignments or in first, second, third assignments. And so at minimum, our staff development supervisor will be working with these staff for 3 months. If they're pretty experienced, after 3 months, they may transition to their kind of permanent team. If they still need some more training, she'll be with them until the supervisor, their permanent supervisor, myself, and her feel like they are ready to move into their permanent position. She's a little overwhelmed right now with 7 people in various stages. That's a lot. So we're hoping that we're getting ready to transition a couple off, and so we're hoping that helps her because she's doing, investigators and she's doing foster care workers, and so that's a lot of different activities, and so she's doing a fantastic job, and the social worker that's helping her is also doing a fantastic job, and I think the other supervisors really appreciate this program. So economic services, staff development is getting ready to start. We're fixing the area for them right now, getting that set, and they're going to be up and running pretty soon. So we're excited about that too.
This sort of like gets them up and running a little bit before they then move and then are assigned a specific supervisor. So then that supervisor isn't starting at ground zero
Right.
with them, right? They
Right.
already have some knowledge.
Yes, they have
Okay.
that foundational knowledge. Now,
Okay.
that permanent supervisor starts from the beginning with them and joins with the staff development supervisor during their conferences, staffings. They're kept up to date on their progress.
Okay.
They have their office where that permanent supervisor is going to be. They're joining in that team, those team activities. But for practice purposes, the staff development supervisor is the one really hands-on with them. And so there will still be ongoing training with the permanent supervisor, but it does take a lot off of them so that when that social worker gets to them, they already have that level of understanding. And so they're, again, like you said, not starting from square one.
That's good.
So, yeah, they're excited about it. Heard some good feedback, so hoping that continues. One other thing I wanted to talk about for child welfare was just an active case discussion, very obviously not identifying any confidential information, but we talked about, a couple months ago, we've been talking about placement difficulties and how we have really struggled across the state, across the nation really, with placement for children, whether it be shortages of just regular foster homes or whether it be shortages of therapeutic homes or group homes or residential treatment facilities. Just across the board, there's a shortage. And so I really wanted to highlight the complexity of this particular individual situation and how these complexities have really exacerbated the whole placement shortage an issue recently. And then also, I wanted to talk a little bit about our collaboration with VIA and how that has worked with this particular child. So this particular child is a 13-year-old male. He came to the attention of Child Protective Services in 2010 when he was 2 years old. And from 2010 to 2013, there are multiple reports about him and his siblings and his parents. They ranged from abuse to neglect to improper care to sexual abuse. There was a litany of allegations and a lot of trauma that this young man and his siblings went through. In 2013, we ended up the judge ended up awarding custody of him to us. So for 2 years, this little boy kind of went from placement to placement. At that time, he had already developed some mental health issues from the trauma he had experienced, and in turn, behavioral issues because of the trauma, and also some underlying just developmental issues. So in 2015, this family, who were not relatives, but they were what we call fictive kin. I'm not exactly sure how they actually came to know this young man, but they ended up taking placement of him, and so that was in 2015. He did wonderful there. Now, he had his ups and downs, and they had their struggles with him, but they fought through it. They worked with him. He was part of a family. Well, in 2018, that placement disrupted for no fault of anyone. It was just some very traumatic things that the family had gone through, and that placement had to change. And so from 2018 to 2021, he again went from placement to placement, unstable. His behaviors were escalating. Mental health was, not stabilized. He was diagnosed in February of 2021 with post-traumatic stress disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, oppositional defiant disorder. He had moderate symptoms of autism spectrum disorder. He had an unspecified neurodevelopmental disorder. Lots and lots of, just complicated issues. He had behaviors such as self-injury, aggression, sexualized behavior. He would steal, he would set fires, break into cars, destroy property. He had explosive behaviors, verbal and physical explosive behaviors, just severe problems with conduct. He was at one point diagnosed with kleptomania and pyromania. And so really struggling. And then in October of 2021, he had to be picked up from a level 3 group home. And we had no place for him to go. And so one of our social workers reached out to the family who had him in 2015 to 2018. After we had called about 50-plus places. From October to November, we called 50-plus places to try to get this little boy somewhere that could provide him shelter, obviously, but also provide treatment that he needed and stabilize his mental health and behaviors. And so this family agreed to take him back. And so he has been there with this family since October 29th. Now, he's having some issues in school and having some just his typical issues that he has related to his trauma and his developmental issues. However, one of the things that is something that a lot of people don't think about is financial issues when it comes to placement. So typically when we place a child in a licensed home, we pay a portion of that expense, and then the state or federal government reimburses us a portion of that expense. If families aren't licensed and they agree to take a child, they don't get a payment unless this child maybe gets Social Security income, or whether some sort of benefit that we can in turn give to an unlicensed placement. Otherwise, they really don't get any type of financial benefit. And because of this child's needs, this family has to have eyes on him 24/7. For his own safety, but for also the safety of someone else in their home and for their own property. He sets fires, he has all these issues. So, we agreed to pay them a certain amount as a county. This comes out of our county money because we get no reimbursement. Because we needed a placement for him so badly that, that's something we were willing to do. And this was a family-like setting. He's going to be part of this family. It was really a blessing. Like we didn't expect this to come to fruition. So we were in touch with VIA and the care coordinators at VIA, Patty Hildebrand and Heather Sane, who worked with us, and their superiors, who worked with us vehemently to provide some sort of help, financial help, to keep him where he is. So in the beginning, they gave us $5,000 and said, this is for 1 month for him to be with his family. And so that was fantastic, and we were just blessed with that. And then they are also working with us to try, because I'm not going to get into all the down in the weeds, the kind of stipulations and eligibility requirements of licensing, but there are some things that have prevented this family from being licensed in the past. And it's not anything not any negative issues, but just something that in the statutes, it doesn't allow them to be licensed. So VIA has also coordinated an effort with state officials to try to figure out how this family can be licensed. And so we're working with that, and hopefully that's gonna pan out, we hope. But just last week, when we've been checking in with VIA because they've talked about some other funding to try to help us. Just last week, they got approval to give us another $18,000 to help this child. And so we were not expecting that. We were expecting some help.
Right.
But we were not expecting that. And so we have been very thankful and just so excited that this child can stay where he is, because, we don't know where he would have been or where he would be now. He probably would have had numerous placements within the last just month because of some of the complexities of his situation.
How old
So
is he
anyway.
again, 13?
13. He'll be 14 this year. Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about that because, I think a lot of people don't understand how difficult sometimes it is to find placement for these children. And there's so many different facets to it. It's not just, we're going to call up one of our numerous foster parents and they're going to say, sure, bring him over. We'll take you. There's just so many things that go into that. And then
And what
finding the right type of placement.
What'd you do between, what was that, October and November when you were looking for a place?
We had there were multiple placements that would keep him for a little while, and then we ended up, at the office.
Piece it
there's
together.
Yeah, just piecing it together day by day. Yeah, begging the place that he that he was at to keep him for a little bit longer, and
Yeah.
so.
What does the future of a child in that situation, what does his future look like as a historical data show?
I don't know statistically. I'm not sure if I can answer that. It really depends on if we can get him in a stable placement, get him proper treatment, and then look for permanency. And by permanency, I mean the family he's with either keeps him, or we look for another family who wants to be that permanent option for him. But for a child in his situation, I think the key is placement stability so that he can have proper treatment. Because without placement stability, children are jumping from county to county, perhaps, from Lenore all the way to the coast. And then they're at the coast for a couple months, and then they come back to Hickory. And so when you talk about trying to find proper treatment, establishing a relationship with a therapist or a team, you can't do that when you don't have placement
Bounce
stability.
around, yeah. And I think it's interesting too, that young man's going to be you know, as the state law says, you're an adult at 18, 5 years from now, and there's no
Yeah.
way that he could live by himself in 5 years. He won't be capable of that.
Yeah, and you've heard us talk about how recently we've had an influx of adult wards that are 18.
Right.
And so
That's the reason I was
Yeah,
bringing it
and
up,
that's the
yeah.
type of situation we run into. So we're working hard on trying to identify situations or children that we think may end up in that situation, and trying to start around age 16, like what are we looking at? What are we preparing for? And so we're really trying to be diligent about that between child services and adult services.
So is the lack of funding for a non-licensed family placement, is that an issue where the state doesn't want to pay for that unlicensed person? Does that become an issue? Is that something that,
It's something that the state has focused on for a while now. Kinship care is what they typically will refer to that as. And they've talked a lot about how we can support kinship providers, because typically kinship providers are people, relatives mostly, who know these children, who these children are comfortable with, and that could be long-term. But, without some assistance, it becomes difficult.
sure,
And so they've talked about that for a long time. They've done things such as what they call kin gap, which is a financial benefit for these individuals or these families, but they've put so many restrictions around it. They have to be licensed, the child has to be a certain age, the child has to be with them for so long. I mean, there's so many restrictions that it makes it unavailable for all the people who need it.
There currently, there is a work group, a study group that's looking at a lot of different things, and that is one of the issues that they're looking at is how to help that area so that there is some sort of process by which there could be payment and that type of thing. So there is
Yeah.
more of I guess right now, because of a lot of the issues that the state's having, that is more on the front burner. I think, especially in this child's situation, it makes it a lot tougher because of some of the challenges that this child is facing, and would typically be in a facility type setting as opposed to this family, and that's why our staff have worked so hard with this family, because it is the best place for this child if we can figure out how to support
them
that and make that happen.
I think it's interesting that as we move forward in society, I feel like there's going to be more little boys like this little boy. But the state and federal government are not keeping up with that change. In fact, they're going the other way. Some of the group home monies are cutting out, and some of the other things they're doing, we're getting more kids and less support from
Yeah.
the federal and state government. So I can see that being an issue as we go down the road.
Yeah.
All right, was that it?
Well, I will just real briefly give a little bit of an update on the multidisciplinary team process that we talked about with adult services just a couple months ago, or maybe last month. They have identified some community members that they would like to invite to participate in this team. So they're in the process of getting some information to them, discussing that MDT process and premise, and so hopefully that will be forming and working very, very soon.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Anybody got any questions? All right. Thank you, Kim. Next is Mr. Will Wakefield with Family Support Services highlights.
We continue to be very busy, with our food nutrition services. I'll just mention a couple of those numbers. 15,347 individuals receiving benefits. Our Medicaid, 25,234 individuals. Child support currently serving 2,933 children. And as we mentioned last month, our child care is working with individuals We don't have a waiting list, so certainly as families come in, we are able to work with them. Our energy, right now, that's, as you've heard us talk about the past couple months, that's right where we are extremely busy. And as you may remember, I think I've said before, when it comes to energy season, it's kind of all hands on deck. We have staff who throughout the year work with energy. Those staff can't do it all during this time of year, so we pull in other staff. And so there are a number of our staff within our economic services area get pulled into our energy programs and now with this new water program. So that has been very busy. We are receiving some different, two different areas of funding for our energy programs. There's kind of what we call our regular energy funds that we would receive, year in and year out for those. The state has also released some pandemic funds that they have had for our energy program, so we have been able to do some more automatic assistance to some families who we knew would be eligible, who were eligible last year, to go ahead and assist some families. And then that's also where some of those water funds came from as well. Our crisis intervention program, that is a year-round program. We did run out of some funding last week. However, we also found out that the state owes us $59,000 in that program. So we've talked with them to let them know that we have not received that additional $59,000. So they are getting that corrected, and we will get that money transferred to us hopefully very quickly. But it has been a busy time within our economic services area and specifically within the energy program. So,
Well, hopefully they'll get it to us before we don't need it anymore. And you know how the state is, so.
and that was one of our questions was, we ran out last week. We had people ready that, were coming in and we could serve them. So
We'll probably get it about July.
we need to get that fixed. I'm hoping within the next week and a half.
I hope so.
That's what we're shooting for.
He's a little more optimistic.
Yeah.
He is. All right, thank you, Will. Any questions, any comments or anything? All right, well, that concludes our meeting from our agenda standpoint. Excuse me. We will now be going into closed session to talk about a confidential case matter with Miss Heather Hennessy, our attorney. So I will need a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
I second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. So we will now go into closed session. Thank you guys for joining us, and we will be back in a little while.